priority list.
Question number 10, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Building and Construction and asks, how quickly will he respond to the building performance assessment and construction recommendations of the Royal Commission of Inquiry into building failure caused by the Canterbury earthquakes?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr. Speaker, as the Government said when it released the final parts of the Royal Commission's report, it expects to release a full response by early to mid-next year.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Can he assure the House that the regulatory system behind the building control system today would not allow a repeat of the sequence of events that ended in the tragedy of the CTV building?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Speaker, I can assure the member, and some of it was under the Labor government and some of those changes have been under the current National government, where we have done full accreditation of things like the Building Consent Authority, and from December next year, building officials who work within those will actually need to be qualified to perform the work.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Can he confirm that specific concerns about poor seismic resistant design were raised with him by the group of engineers who approached him in his electorate office in 2008, and will he now urgently review those concerns in light of the Royal Commission's findings?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr. Speaker, I presume the member is talking about the individual John Scarry raising it with me. Sir, he raised the concern about the entire engineering profession in New Zealand and about poor standards across modern building practice. I've got a copy of notes from the things that he said at the time, and what was interesting, sir, is CTV building was built back in 1986, a time when Mr. Scarry was not referring to.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Can he confirm that specific concerns about poor seismic resistant design were raised with him by the group of engineers, which included Charles Clifton, the Associate Professor of Civil Engineering and Structures Group Leader, Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, University of Auckland? And will he now review the concerns that were raised with him by the group of engineers in light of the findings of the Royal Commission?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
Mr. Speaker, by my recollection of that meeting some many years ago, there were 3 at it. They made the claim again on this morning's radio. Mr. Scarry said 2 Prime Ministers, that is Helen Clark and John Key, have both ignored him, and 8 Ministers of Building and Construction, which I presume is 7 from the Labor Party, followed by myself, have ignored him. He feels terribly ignored, and IPENs are ignoring him as well.
The Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Can he confirm that specific concerns about poor seismic resistant design were raised with him in 2008, and will he now specifically review those concerns in light of the findings of the Royal Commission?
The Honourable Maurice
Mr.
Williamson.
Speaker, it's very hard to recall the meeting. It was in an electorate office. It wasn't with officials. It was a couple of engineers, the 2 that have been mentioned, plus 1 other, who said to me that, and the general concern was across the entire engineering profession, and that all the buildings that we were currently building were not up to standard and I needed to do something. Mr. Speaker, I've made it clear on a number of public occasions that if Mr. Scarry can get the support of the engineering fraternity, that is IPANS and CSOC and a whole lot of other engineering associations, and back his claim, which they don't, I will take it seriously.
Supplementary,
The
Mr.
Honourable
Speaker.
Leanne Dalzell.
In light of the fact that the Royal Commission report, volumes 5 and 7, acknowledge that the standards, the regulatory system behind the building control standards is more lax now than it was in 1986, which was the point that was raised with him. And given the recommendations for improvement, will he now review those matters that have been brought to his attention all those years ago?
The Honourable Maurice Williamson.
All of the recommendations made by the Royal Commission will be looked at carefully, considered carefully, and then a final considered view will be put by the government. But I just do not accept that the current regime is more lax than it was back in 1986.
Point of order, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr. Speaker, I seek leave to table an email that Charles Clifton, who I described in one of my questions, emailed through to Radio New Zealand this morning after he heard people saying that the system today was nowhere near as dangerous as it was back then.
Leave us sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is no objection. Question number 11, Nikki Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the Minister for Building and Construction, what is the government